What's up, Archons? I'm Flightless Pheasant, and if you're getting this message, it means they're coming to get me. Don't forget, that which remains remembers!
Sorry for that. Well, before we get into it, I'm a huge fan of Keyforge, and if you are too, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell, as I'll be bringing you even more lore from Keyforge and the Crucible. Today I'm going to be doing another installment in my series Houses of the Crucible, where I walk you through one of the houses that's part of the Keyforge lore. Each house is unique, but they all work together with Archons to collect amber, forge keys, open vaults, and loot the treasures inside. They bring with them their own design inspirations, membership requirements, hierarchies, ideals, technology, and uses for amber. And this series is about breaking it all down so that you too can appreciate the unique world that is the Crucible. Today we're going to be talking about the newest house to join the Keyforge family. In fact, technically it's not even out yet, but we've got all the cards and I feel like I'm ready to talk about it. So we're going to be doing House Gheistoid. House Gheistoid has a lot of its design inspirations coming from gothic horror or suburban horror. Things like haunted houses, decrepit cemeteries, ancient clocks, and other motifs that you would likely see in those genres make regular appearances in Gheistoid cards. They also have sort of a plasma energy kind of look to them that sort of feels to me evocative of old ghost stories, but maybe I'm stretching a bit there. Mechanically, House Gheistoid is all about taking full advantage of the player's discard pile, using it to recur cards to their hand, archive, or deck, or sometimes even purging cards that they can then recover later, which is quite unique, as historically the Purge Zone has been a place that you just don't come back from. This does extend somewhat to affecting your opponent by causing them to discard cards as well and benefiting from them being in a similarly discard-heavy state. But broadly speaking, Gheistoid is all about taking full advantage of your own losses and turning what would otherwise be useless or discarded cards into a resource that can be utilized to give yourself an edge. The membership of House Gheistoid is the most exclusive we've seen so far, made up entirely of reanimated objects that have been filled with amber and a sort of plasmic energy called ectoplasm. Once reanimated, they're filled with a malice for those who discarded them in the first place, who they then seek out for revenge. This means that all of the members of House Gheistoid either have the Spectre or Robot trait, making them one of the most homogeneous houses we've seen so far. The hierarchy of House Gheistoid actually appears to be fairly loose, with most members free to go about their own business without any real significant amount of oversight. However, they do seem to have sort of a familial connection with each other, which causes the larger members of the house to protect the smaller ones whenever they're in danger. It also gives them a sort of camaraderie, a desire to seek friendship with each other, and sometimes with members of other houses. This isn't exclusively the case, as there are a couple of characters that are definitively at the top of the House Gheistoid hierarchy, with the Grim Reaper being second in the power structure of House Gheistoid, and just above him being the Amalgamator, which is a individual that was at the center of the House Gormengeist adventure, and at the end of the events of that adventure, got away and began animating all the garbage that would eventually become the members of House Gheistoid. So in a way, that adventure is a prequel to this entire house's existence. And I'll definitely explore that some more when I go over my adventures on the Crucible video for the House Gormengeist adventure. But right here, all we need to know is that the Amalgamator is definitely the leader of this house, and it survived that adventure to go on to create more animated objects that it filled with its own malice at being discarded. The members of House Gheistoid are compelled by their feelings of resentment over being discarded by their previous owners and forced to leave behind lives that they presumably enjoyed. This feeling of anger is a lot of what motivates House Gheistoid in its various actions, but I think more importantly, behind that anger, there's loss, sadness, and loneliness. And that drives many of the members of House Gheistoid to become very companionable. They like to pair up with each other or with other members of other houses, and are very protective of lost souls like themselves. They also seem to have a kinship for the young or the weak, who have similar feelings of being helpless. Honestly, although House Gheistoid really projects this feeling of fear and resentment, most of their cards are more playful in nature than they are actually bitter. Except for the ones that are definitely bitter and want to see the world returned to rubble. When it comes to technology, Gheistoid is sort of in a weird place because they don't really seem to create technology as we would call it. They will sometimes animate purpose-built objects to plow fields or create structures or drive around, but that's not so much technology as it is new members of their house, and as a result, they have this weird blend between creatures and artifacts, where some of their artifacts have creature traits and some of their creatures have artifact traits. But again, I don't really feel like this qualifies as technology. And as a result, it's hard to pinpoint if they do have a technological design. It's more like they create what they need as a new friend with that purpose in mind. When it comes to uses for Amber, Gheistoid seems to have only one use for Amber, but it's absolutely critical to the foundation of their entire house. Gheistoid collects, consumes, and uses Amber exclusively to power themselves and create more of their kind. As a result, they have a voracious desire to collect and consume this Amber and bring it back to the Amalgamator to create more of their own, but they don't use it for anything else. So they don't seem to have the psychic resonance that other houses have for the various specific uses of Amber. For them, Amber literally is life, and they couldn't exist without it. House Gheistoid has a strange relationship with the other houses of the Crucible. The house itself is broadly viewed with suspicion and fear from most of the other houses on the Crucible, but individual members seem to get along with the other houses quite well, with some pairing off with Martians or joining the Quantum's crew as their new quartermaster. So it's in this strange place where the house as a whole is viewed with fear and suspicion, but individual members seem to have very little difficulty finding their way into the other houses and becoming quite comfortable there. In spite of being a very new house, House Gheistoid has left a strong impression with me. I really like how they're all born from this sort of anger and resentment, but underneath that, they're lonely, and that drives them to companionship and to bonding with others. It really strikes a chord in my heart to think about this really quite tragic house. Plus, I do like that their mechanics focus around the discard, as up until now, that has felt kind of like a missed opportunity, but with House Gheistoid doing all of these new things with it, I think we're going to see some really interesting things in the upcoming sets. I hope you guys enjoyed this deep dive into House Gheistoid. Come with me next time as we go to the lab and do a little bit of experimentation along with the researchers of House Logos. Until then, I'm Flightless Pheasant, and this has been Houses of the Crucible. Later, Archons!